My name is Mrs. Evelyn Beaton. I'm a Guyanese. I came from South America, from Guyana. I've been here since 1961. I've got 5 children, 10 grands, and nearly 10 great-grands. I lost my husband 10 years ago. This will be 11 in October. I was always a bright teenager growing up. I came over here roughly 25. I came to chaperone my sister, who was just 18, and they into our upbringing. My dad just asked me to postpone my wedding to come with her and see that everything went okay. And my brother-in-law didn't, as she was here, you know, that he could do wherever. So I was here, as I said, from 61. My husband came up in 61. I came before him. I came in June and he came in October, and we got married in December. I want to go back home. It was disgusting. It wasn't what well, I came by plane. I didn't come by boat.
Right.
I came by plane. We flew over here, and when we got to the airport there at Gatwick, I said, is this what they call England? The place was so undescribable, not to what you heard of. As they said, we thought he was paved in gold. I come from a country with gold, so I wouldn't, you know, think there. And I was really flabbergasted when I saw the state, the pools, it was shabby, very shabby, and wasn't what I expected at all to see.
Well, I'm 78 years old now. I came to England when I was 18. Because I came to England to get a better life than the one I was living. And I decided, my mother decided for me.
So your mother was already here, yeah?
My mother was already here. Straight to London, Brixton. It was all right, you know. And I had a job, I got a job. Teenage pay. I was a machinist at the time. The money was small, and I thought, well, if I'm going to get this small money, it's hard. So I joined the British Army. Money was still small then, but it's better, because at least I was seeing the world. And that's the way things was for me. I had to be an infantryman. That was bad. Anyway, I did it. I did my tour all over. Where the trouble is, I was there, doing everything.
You actually come in
I come to England in 1968. I was 14 coming up to 15. So that was the eye-opener for me, as you can imagine. Didn't want to come here. Yeah? I cried all the way on the plane coming here. With my 2 bigger brothers telling me, stop balling, man, where you ball for? You're going to a better place, you have better life for come. You know, that's what they were telling me on the plane, you know. So, because obviously, the 2 other brothers I came with, you know, Tom was the one above me. He was a man who, he knew about things, like he would read up a lot. Yeah. He was one of the ones who got to school and, you know,
education,
get all his education, go to church, read the Bible. So he was able to say to me, listen, you know, Father sent him for us because he's hoping for a better life for us. You know, so he kind of like settled my mind on that journey coming in. We was picked up from Ipswich, you know, got off the plane and, you know, coming through And like, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know my dad, like I said. I come and I think wear some kind of sign saying Flowers, or somebody come out and ask for Mr. Flowers, and there was two men standing across, and my brother came and said to me, yeah, that's Dad. And then he come and get us, put us in the car, and it was like a long journey. I remember this long journey, and all this smoke coming out of these chimneys and things. You know, so I'm saying like, we're at a whole heap of factory in England. You know? Because you can imagine in Jamaica, then the smoke you see coming out of, it's like out the factory then.
Yeah.
So like, my brother and my dad said, no man, the house. And so the house them say them have smoke that come out of the chimney. They call them chimney. So that's how it's first time I hear about chimney.
Name's John Turner. I will be 67 in 2 weeks' time. My occupation, I'm retired now, but previously before I retired, I worked in the servicing industry for 46 years, where I was started on the tools of the roller driver, then I became foreman, supervisor, and my last 20 years was as a health and safety advisor. Well, obviously, I came here when I was 8 years old, so I've got some memories of Jamaica. I remember growing up there with my grandfather, because my parents had left and come to England to work, and I lived right in the country in St Catherine with my grandfather and grandmother, and there's plenty of other relatives about in the area, and I remember having a happy childhood at the time with with plenty of animals about, with crops growing in the field. I remember my sugar cane, mangoes and stuff like that. I remember being a happy time when I was a child back home, yeah. Well, I arrived in England on the 2nd of October 1962. So I can't remember how long the plane journey was in them days to get there, whether it was a day or whatever, I cannot remember. I know we stopped off in America for a short while, then we carried on to England, but I think that's just all in a day, as far as I can remember. Ipswich wasn't the first place because I came across with a lady, because I was due to come across with my sister, my older sister Alice, but that didn't happen. I can't remember the reasons again. I don't know if it was due to seats or tickets or whatever the issue was at the time. So Alice ended up coming across in a short while before I did on a separate flight, and I came across with a I don't know if she's a friend of the family at the time or somebody was travelling from Jamaica to London, and I think London, I can't remember, and I came across with them on the plane and stayed with them wherever they lived at the time until my parents came and picked me up, I think a day later or something like that. I can't remember the exact time. One of the most vivid memories for me, waiting for my parents to arrive, was I looked out the window and this white stuff was coming down, and I wondered what the hell that was, because I'd never seen and realised that it was snow, but it was the first time I'd actually seen snow. So that was probably my first memory of being in this country, is looking at the window and wondering what the hell that was coming down. Yeah.
My name is E.B. Cox McConney. I'm from Barbados. I met a boy, a young man, and we had a very short conversation, and he told me he was going to, that was about October time 1955, and he told me he just come back from America and he's going to emigrate to England, and he think that we can have a relationship, and if I would write to him and we can start it from there. So he wrote me about 18 months, and then he sent a package for me. That's how I come here. The 22nd of June 1956. I came directly to Liverpool docks on the 22nd of June, a Friday morning at 10 o'clock, and we were taken to the customs, checked out, and buses took us from Liverpool docks over to Liverpool Street Station, and I travelled from Liverpool Street Station to Ipswich, where I remain living until now. But there was somewhere for me to live, and I lived there for, I think, nearly 5 years, and the landlord of the house at that time was from Barbados.
Okay.
And Crane, he used to work at Crane, and they had a redundancy. And the landlord said that he told the landlord he's going to give the resident up. And the landlord asked him if he think any of the tenants would be interested in renting the house and sublet it as he did. So he said yes. So my husband at that time and we took it, and I continued to live there till about 6 years, till I was able to buy one. I could have bought that, but it had 11 rooms, 2 kitchen, 2 basement rooms. And I then had the second child at that time. And I know I couldn't maintain it to get my money out of it. So we decided to gather all that we was making from that and what we was saving, because it was our intention. Housing was so bad, it was our intention to go try and get somewhere for ourselves. So we bought a house on the 30th of September 1961.
That's why we are here. Because as you know, life here was better than home. It was rough, but we have to survive. We haven't got a choice. We never had a choice. So that's why we immigrated here. Because my brother was here before me. So he sent for me.
Okay.
And I made him my home.
Delaretta Williams. I'm 80 years old, and I used to be a nursing wife. Going right back, I can remember that my father left my mom, and so there were 3 of us, and so my mom had to take us back, because we were in Kingston, take us back to Mandeville, where my grandparents were. So we grew up with our grandparents and went to school there. Luckily my mom got work for some Canadian people who weren't far from where we live. So we were able to see her, and we were able to at times to go over and see her, because we were able to play with the Canadians' children. And it was a secondary, because I don't understand the system of this education here. We went to the first school at kindergarten, I think. Then I went to the government school. From there, I went to a convent school, and then I took my Cambridge exams. And then my mom had the opportunity to come here to keep house for a doctor who was a Jamaican. And so when I was 17, and left school, she sent for me. And I came with the intention to go straight into nursing, but they were living out on a farm out in Ashfield, near Devon. And because I was not quite 18, I had to wait for the next intake. I came in October, and so I couldn't start until the January. So from October to January, I stayed on the farm with my mom. And then I came into nursing. I started, those days you had PTS, we did that. In those days you had to live in the nurse's home. And from there I qualified as a staff nurse. I was there, I worked in orthopedic outpatients. I worked on night duty. And then I wanted to go away to Canada. So I didn't have enough qualifications, so I had to go into midwifery. I went into midwifery, and then at the end of it, I liked, because we did, those days, the training was different. We had to do 6 months in the hospital and 6 months out in the community. I like community.
And so I stayed on. So I was in the community for 25 years or so.
Yes.
And so I just stayed in the community. It was lovely. I was sort of at that time, only black midwife in the community. Got on ever so well with the people, you know.
My name is Clem Davis. I'm 82 years old. I'm from Jamaica.
Okay.
Came to this country in 1959. Well, my late husband came over, and then he sent for me. But to be honest, I did not want to come. But as parents all over, I was told I had to. So, reluctantly I came. Very, very difficult. I couldn't get used to the surrounding, the houses, the cold weather, the fires in the houses. I just couldn't settle down. The people weren't very friendly. We were looked at as if we are nobody. Well, it wasn't too bad. In the black community we were okay. We were friendly. When we come to the weekend, we always see each other at weekends. You know, house parties and that sort of thing. But when it comes to the white people, very few speak to us. Very, very hard. Especially in the workplace, it was very, very difficult. Oh, you're taking me back.
Yes.
You're taking me back. I think my first job was at an egg factory. An egg factory in Emswell, where we got to pack eggs. Very, very cold. And I work at chicken factory, where they do the chicken, not the eggs, do the chicken.
John Lennox.
No, what was in it? It was in Barham. Can't remember the name. It was in Barham. I work at several different places. I work at Burton, Son and Sanders, and I work at Crane. I work at several different places, and they were. I think the exchange sent me to one place to work, which I didn't realize what it was. We get an open top lorry, and it was a field job.
Right.
And I got there, I says, no way I'm working here. And the man says to us, he did not ask the women, he asked the men. But they sent us as black women there. And I asked him to take me back home because no way I'm going to do it. So I did not.
Yes, I came straight. There was a lovely English brother in the church. My husband had already started the church. And he brought my husband to London to pick us up. We came by boat, an Italian boat, a Pina, about three weeks on the sea. I love that, that was nice. And came to London to pick us up.
Okay.
But the good thing about it when I come is that this old Englishman also had a house for me to stay in. So I didn't have to stay with families. My husband was staying with families before that, you see, and it wasn't that nice. But so I went straight to Gower Street. And it was okay. I don't let nothing bother me. I was fine. I was fine. I mean, again, my husband started with English people, or started with church, and they look after us very well, you know. They had a brother living in Capel St. Mary. His feet was blown off in the war, but his car was adjusted so he can drive, he and his wife. And they used to come from Capel St. Mary and pick us up in Gower Street to take us to Silent Street to church. I thought, oh, you could walk it. But they treated us very nice. I did very good. I had no problem with the English folks. The Englishman that had no feet, they invited us for dinner one time after church in Capel St. Mary. And Aquila, my first daughter, she was just about 3 years. And you know, all cooking is rice and chicken on Sunday. So the lady set the table and Aquila said, Mom, we're not having no rice and chicken today. I said, shh. So the lady said, what she said, I said, don't bother with her. You know, so we had good times with them, really. And they treated us very well.
I'm what you would call one of the barrel children. I was left by my parents at a very, very early age. I think I was only 2 years old when my mum left and came to England. I was left with my grandmother. Life in Jamaica, as far as I remember, was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. As from a very, very early age, from the age of 4 or 5, I had animals. I used to keep animals, cows, pigs, chicken, goats, donkey. I used to have my own donkey where I used to ride, you know. So life was always fun, and food, you didn't have to worry about food or going to the shop to buy food. It was always there, you know. Planted right where you are and go and pick or dig up fresh. So yeah, life for me was very good in Jamaica. I went to Kellett's primary school, which was about 5 or 6 miles from where we actually live. But you know, we had to walk to school, you know, every morning. But that was one of the reasons why so many Jamaicans are so good runners. Yeah, just to explain what the barrel child, which is something I'm quite proud of. A barrel child is those children who was left behind in whether it's Jamaica, Barbados or whatever in the 50s by their parents who came here to work, and then they would send provisions home in a barrel to support the children who was left there. I arrived on the 13th of January. It was a very, very cold, it was snowing, and I had shorts on. You know, from leaving from a hot country like Jamaica and coming into this environment, as a youngster, I really wasn't happy and I really didn't want to be here. And for the first time, I met my siblings and people that I never knew and didn't know who they were, and there I was being introduced to a completely new family. That was a very, very strange experience, you know. And again, not knowing the mother and father, and although I met my father at the airport and seeing my mother for the first time standing in the doorway going, hello, you know, so yeah, that was quite strange. I haven't remembered my parents because my dad came to England a year after I was born in '57, and my mum came in '58, so I was 2 years old when my mum left here.
You got me joking.
Honestly now.
It was terrible. I had no problems with anywhere to live. I think I told you that from the beginning. But I thought, mother country, come to the mother country. We need your support. There's work here, so you're welcome. They never told us about no blacks. We don't want you here. You come to take our jobs. Go back to Africa, and that sort of thing. But it upset me to listen to. But as I said, I had no problems.
At one time in London, before I joined the army, and
Somewhere to live, obviously, yeah.
And there was a sign put up, no vacancy. And it was no vacancy for black. White is good. And even dogs are good, but no black. The dogs were welcome, but blacks wasn't welcome. And you could go to a house and there's vacancy there. But all of a sudden, as soon as you go to the house, the vacancy is not there anymore. You walk down the street and you see a white man going and going right up. Vacancy open again.
Yeah, Mom and Dad talked about some things where if you wanted a room and you go knock on the door, room to let, and they would say, no, we haven't got a room to let. So they walked away and they sent an English person to knock on the door, room to let. Oh yes, we got a room to let. Yeah, and then they got a room, I think it was on Willoughby Hill. It was quite big, really large room, and they were all sharing in this one room. And I remember my mum saying, can't wait to get a house. That was a council house, that would be. And they eventually did. But I don't think they had many problems and issues. But there were the underlying things like you're black, your face doesn't fit, and you know, you have to get a friend to call and knock on the door. And oh yes, there's a room. So
Ipswich was the only place I knew. My mum settled here when we come from the airport. And I said, lady, where's our house? I said, lady, where's my house? She went, this is our house. I went, what? This was this room with a double bed and a table that turned up, open as a bed. During the day, that's a table to eat on. At night, that's a bed. I said, I want to go back home.
Okay.
I said, I want to go back home. And you not take me from a 7-bedroom bungalow what my grandfather built with his own 2 hands to bring me to this. And we lived in that 1-bedroom place till I was 14.
It's horrible because it's not something I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about racial anything like that. I didn't know anything like that, and it was really, really horrible, you know, going on the street and they're making monkey noises at you, you know. It was bad. It wasn't nice. It wasn't. And even in the last 2 years, I've had that done to me. I was standing at the bus stop up here, waiting for the bus, and there were 2 men coming up the street with their 2 children. And they have these balloons that they make into little monkeys.
Yeah.
And I stood at the bus stop and the 2 men came up to me. One stood east side at me, looking in my face and making monkeys sound.
What, right? 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, right at the bus stop up there. And I did not say a word to them. I just highballed them. I didn't say a word. And they stood there for a few seconds. And then they left. Feel bad, sad for what I've done, for my contribution to the country here, and to know that this is still going on. It's not very nice. Because I just could not believe what I was hearing that morning with the 2 grown men with 2 children. Now you know where the children can get it from.
Yeah, of course.
From about Stowmarket, Essex and those places, they had, well, the Mods and Rockers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I remember the Mods and Rockers.
Right. So it's the Jamaican boys that when those on the bikes had their chains and knives and what's not. The Jamaican boys had their knives as well and thing, and it's they who put a stop to these motorcyclists, the mods, as they call them, and the rockers was. So yes, all the time that was the only thing. To go back where you come from and all that thing, when they say, one actually asked me, I have a photograph of our home thing, and when I showed, she said, are you sure that isn't a government house thing? I said, that's my dad who is standing at the window, and it's him who designed that property. So, I said, what do you expect? To see me up in a tree and doing like the monkeys and, you know, thing there. And, I didn't mean it like that. I said, well, all right, that's why I'm telling you. That is my dad there at the window. he designed the house, and as many people think to get that design the thing. So it's not all of us, you see, come from where you all think we're from.
I remember my daughter came home one day crying, and I said, "What's the matter?" And she said that the kids saying, "You're black, you're black." So I said, "Don't upset yourself for it, because black is beautiful. And if they say anything to you, say, 'Thank God you're black, you're beautiful.'" And she did that, and I've never heard anymore, you know. I didn't, you know, interfere, you know. I didn't understand anything about these racism business anyway, because I just, in a sense, kept myself to myself, just look after my family, you know. That was my life, you know, and then I went into the church, and that was then my life, you know, sort of thing, yeah.
Plenty. I've been beaten up several times by groups of white guys. Right. You see him friend, we talk about Buster, yeah? When I was young, when I was living in London, we was all young. So because a group of us living in London, our next group that live in Ipswich, they will come to London and visit. Yeah, so when they come and visit, we'll make sure that they get back to Ipswich safe, for like wearing by, if they come by train, if they don't know the underground system, well, me personally will take them and make sure they get to Liverpool Street and get on the train, and I'll go back to wherever I'm going. Yeah. So that was the case. One night I take Buster out to the Liverpool Street, come back up to Ivory Corner, come out the train station, walk into a National Front march, and they kick the hell out of me. Yeah, they beat me up bad. So that's one. Next time in Ipswich, we was at the Manabo room. Me and Francis Guthrie was taking two girls to the taxi rank. Get the two girls in the taxi, then we're going back to the dance. This 4 white guys come along, yeah, let's kick up this nigga. Just start kick the hell out of us. For no reason, right? They just switching us.
I used to love jazz music, and as a youngster, I couldn't listen to the music I want to listen to because it's jazz. So I had to go to the West End, a nightclub in West End, just to listen to jazz music. I came out, I missed the last train to go get back to London, to Brixton. And these steady boys, about 9, he says, "You're brave." So I said, "Why am I brave?" So I look at him, look at his feet, in his eyes. And he went mad, he went, "Look at me like that." And I'm thinking, boy, these people are gonna kill me. So I had to go into a little restaurant. They open late at night, sort of thing, early morning, to catch the first train back to Brixton. And it was waiting for me to jump on the train, and I got away from them.
So these attacks, were they frequent?
Oh, there's plenty. You don't know when you're safe. You never know when you're safe as a black man.
My main struggle, I've witnessed certain things. Being brought up in London, yeah, I've witnessed police brutality. Yeah, I've witnessed innocent people being wrongly, accused and being beaten up. Yeah, including myself. Yeah. And dealing with the likes of the National Front and the racist groups wasn't really such a problem, but dealing with the people who's in authority, who's supposed to be protecting you, and knowing how the racist element that comes with that was quite challenging, and it still is,
All I say is that people, when we came here, came here with the intention of working and making our lives better than what it was over there. Mind you, I didn't know this. All I know, my mom said for me, and I came over. And what's happening today, because we have children, and those children feel they have a right here, you know, sort of thing. It's obvious that there's going to be a lot of problem, yeah. Because I remember one day, the top boss and I were going up in the lift, and she just said, "Williams, you know something?" She said, "If I have one job going, and it's one of you and one of mine, you know, the white and the black, she's going to give the job to the white one, even if you're better off, you know, more qualified than that, because they haven't got a country to go to, but you can go back to your country." I remember that, yeah. Wow. That is a thing I remember, because I didn't know much about racism and things like that, because I just wanted to do my work and go home, live my life with my family. Maybe it's selfish, I don't know. But in that way, I didn't get too involved with anything.
I was actually born and bred in London, Kennington, London, and I spent a lot of my youth in Streatham, London. Got married 1988 to an Ipswich lady, and we lived in in London for about 2 years first, and then we moved from London and then moved to Ipswich 1989. Okay, because we bought a place before we got married, so that was a 2-year period there, and we've been in Ipswich ever since. Yeah, my parents are from Jamaica. My mother was from St. Mary in Jamaica, Berkeley Town District, and her name was Aldith. Her former name was Aldith Anderson. My dad was Lestine Edward Angus, and he was from Linstead, Banbury in Jamaica. They came in 1961, the same year that I was born.
Okay.
In fact, my father came here first, then my mother came later. I got 2 brothers. Dennis, again, he was born in Jamaica, and Tony, or is Leroy Anthony, but everybody calls him Tony. They were both left in Jamaica, and obviously they was supported in Jamaica while they was over here, while my parents was over here. And I actually met them when I was 6 years old. And till this day, I remember the greeting that we both had. My brother Tony, who's about 1.5 years older than me, I remember him picking me up over his head, you know, and greeting me and my brother. It was a great time.
Life was difficult. It wasn't quite easy. I remember my school days. We used to walk to school, often not having enough, you know, going to school in terms of eating and, you know, food provided for us. Hence, we used to really like going to school because food was provided at school. My uncle, who came to England actually I think he came in 1946, he came to this country. He was the son of my grandmother, who we lived with. He came here, again, very similar to the reasons why I came. He came because, again, he was invited because he was told that England needed people to help build the country because of the ravages of the war. They needed help to do so many things, and he came away here. I don't think he came with the Windrush per se boat, but he came around the time of the Windrush. I think there were so many boats, but it was one of those he came with. And when he came, he used to continuously communicate with us. He used to tell us about his life here, and he knew how difficult things were with us. We didn't have much food provided. Our school books we used to have to borrow. Sometimes we were not provided. So when he came and he started working here in the bus station, he used to send back money home for us, you know, particularly to look after his grandmother, but we benefited as well because the money he sent mom, you know, our grandmother would buy food and she would sort of squeeze, as we say, squeeze some so that we can get school uniform and books to go to school. So in that way we benefited well, and he used to send as well with the barrels, with all the lots of goodies, you know, he sent school shoes for us as well, he sent food, parcels, and many different things that we can identify with. I remember him sending these little slates for us as children where we could have written on them with chalk to help us, you know, with our schoolwork and everything like that.
My name is Angelina and I am a third culture kid, and I am the founder of Walking in Your Purpose, which is a business that uses wisdom and lived experiences to shape organisational culture for individuals and companies. You asked about a third culture kid. I am a third culture kid, and what that basically means is I spent my formative years outside of my host culture. But in order to be able to talk to what that looks like, you have to kind of go back to legacy. And where that began was with my grandparents. My grandparents are Commonwealth citizens, so they were invited to come to this country to help rebuild it. Now, they weren't immigrants and they weren't migrants. They're Commonwealth citizens, which basically means they are cousins of this country. Now, when they were due to arrive here, they wanted to form a community, kind of a collective of individuals to make sure that it was a smooth transition. And what they did was they made sure that their food was taken care of, their accommodation, everything from arrival at the airport, everything that they would need in order to be effective members of that community. Now, why is that important? That is important because based on where you come from, you always love what you love. So no judgment, you know, I have been one of those individuals who've gone to Atlanta and I've looked for an all-day British breakfast. So yes, it came with waffles and I was like, where are the baked beans? So just like my grandparents, we want to eat what we like to eat and what we know that we like to eat. So my grandparents, one set is from Jamaica and the other set is from Trinidad. My parents met, and within 6 weeks of meeting they got married. My dad joined the Royal Air Force, and then we left, and then we began to travel the world. So that's when I was born, and I moved straight out of my host culture, which was England.
So were you actually born in England?
I was born in Swindon.
In Swindon?
Yes.
Okay.
Never been there.
Okay. Fine.
So for me, what that means is I have to dance in and out of 4 cultures on a daily basis. So the first one, I wake up and I'm in England. So when I go to the shops, people naturally look at me and think I'm going to have a different accent, perhaps an African accent, and then I'm British, so that's a shock for them. Then the majority of my work is spent where the keyboards are different, the money is different, etc. And then on my way home, I might pop in to see my parents, and then I walk into the middle of a Caribbean culture. So everything is hotter because the radiator is turned up, the food is different, the smell is different, but there's laughter and there's joy there. So it's having the ability to move in and out of each one and be successful. So position-wise, I've always been in positions where culturally, I've always tied back into kind of where my grandparents originated from. So establishing some type of cultural adaptation to a community that is new here. So we have no choice but to try to thrive. We have to use our lived experiences, whether they're positive or negative, put that together kind of into a pot and create your unique culture. One of the reasons why I'm standing here is to honour a legend, Dr. Alan Mims. So Dr. Alan Mims was a third culture adult who actually is a doctor from the Bahamas, and he actually worked behind this wall. So in 1904, this was his residence, and he is unique because he was the first elected black politician in this country, and he is the first black mayor in the United Kingdom. But the only thing that speaks to his legacy is this wall. So much of our culture and our history is missed. And it would be fantastic is as the people of Thetford walk around this historic town, they were to see something that talks to all of the cultures of this town.
Since moving here to Thetford, I have explored some of the black history. Thomas Paine is Thetford's most famous son, having strengthened his reputation with his influence in the American and French revolutions, popularizing the term the United States of America. The equal rights champion was born in 1737 and left Thetford when he was just 19. Almost 300 years later, the Thomas Paine Society continues to work to keep his memory alive, especially in his birthplace, where the inequality of the voting and legal systems helped to shape his views. Now, as a democratic campaigner and writer, the corset maker's son was one of the first people campaigning his voice to the anti-slavery fight while living in America. Paine's 1775 great essay, African Slavery in America, was published in the Pennsylvania Journal. That written article paved the way for the country's first anti-slavery society to be set up in just a few weeks later, with Paine one of its founders. Like Thomas Paine's presence till his death in 1809, he has helped to shape where we are today, still fighting for equality. We are thankful for societies like the Caribbean and African Community Health Support Forum to continue to be the voice for the voiceless in putting together projects like this to continue to educate. Towards the end of Thomas Paine's life, he was shunned for his ideas. His funeral was attended by just 6 people, and 2 of whom were believed to be freed slaves. I'm the youngest of 9 siblings who were born. We were born and raised in the area. I do have some of my family members who actually came here from Jamaica with my parents. My parents came in 1960. My mother came in 1960 and my father came in 1961. My mother came from Craighead, Manchester in Jamaica, and she came here and she actually was a nurse when she came. But when she got here, they didn't want her to be a nurse, as patients didn't want her to actually be able to touch them. So she came in as a ward orderly and moved up in the ranks to be able to serve the hospital the way she wanted to. My father, when he came in 1961, he came to the UK as an engineer. He worked in the engineering industry in several different industries in Ipswich. I started work in the 1980s. Now my first job was one of the, I don't know if anyone remembers it, the old-fashioned YTS schemes. Now then, with the YTS schemes, you work for a company, but the government, it's more like a training scheme. Now they'd probably call it internships. So my first internship, YTS scheme, was with Starlines, and they were a kitchen and bathroom retailer on 4th Street. I started there in the scheme, but they later took me on, so I did probably about 2 years there. I left from there in 84, and I went from there to Meadows Freight in Woodbridge Road, where I was a shipping clerk. And then I left from there in 86, and I went to work in London in Westminster, and I've been with the civil service ever since. You really don't get difficult experiences until you're more up the ladder in your career. That's where you'll see people try to pull you down off of that ladder. Somehow you're told to rise above it. But that doesn't mean that it's not painful. It doesn't mean that journey isn't one that, you know, some people can fall and some can rise above it. It's a learning tool for some, but it is hard, and it's an unnecessary hardship, an unnecessary journey. When you speak to black women today, and a lot of us that are in careers where we can talk about our experiences because we've already past that journey and gone on into settling. But you can always speak to a black woman, and the journey and the criticisms that they've faced are all the same. It's as if there's some sort of rule book that we didn't get. But their journeys and the treatment is all the same. You can share the experiences, and ideally we now share those experiences with our younger members of our lives and households, and we hope that this reaches a lot of young people, and to see that it's just because it's in that workplace where you are, it's not everywhere.
Yeah, I would say I definitely have. The role that I'm currently in, I haven't been in for very long, but in my previous roles, I would say not like my brother said, not like anyone calling me names or anything like that, but just like, I don't know if it's racism or like interest, but I get a lot of questions like, oh, do you go to a normal hairdressers and stuff like that, and oh, like, can I touch your hair, like, do you wear wigs because you don't have hair and stuff like that, and
that's racist.
Kind of questions. Yeah. So it would just be a lot of like, do you do normal this, do you do normal that, and things like my boss saying like, oh, I'll treat us all to fake tans, and then I'm sitting here like, okay. So yeah, just stuff like that really. Yeah.
I was going to say similar, because before I had the kids I was working at school, I was the music instructor at primary school, and there was one incident where I had like these long braids in, and we had a big meeting, and the head teacher was telling us about how all the kids weren't allowed to have braids in their hair, and I was kind of standing there wondering if anyone was going to talk to me and like just say, just to ask questions, because they were kind of a bit confused. Like someone was like, "Oh, they're called cane-rows or what?" Like they didn't know, because I was trying to say to them, if you tell all the parents that braids are banned, they're going to be like, is that cornrows? Is that like extensions? What is it? But nobody really came to me.
And you already had them in your head.
I was the only black member of staff, like teacher. It just felt really awkward. I was just standing there, and I just felt really, really awkward. Definitely.
I remember, one particular time when I was playing football. This is a perfect example. I had a cup final in Videography when I was about 14, 15. And it was at the Billericay football stadium, so it was quite a big, prestigious event. A lot of people were there. I was playing. My family was there. They came from Ipswich to support me. And there was one incident where my dad was involved. My dad was, cheering me on. And I'm not really too sure what happened, because obviously I wasn't there. I was on the pitch playing football. But basically, long story short, my dad ended up with an accidental elbow to his chest. And my dad doesn't really complain about things like that usually, but even to this day, it was still mentioned about this, elbow to his chest, that he wish he could have done this, that, and the other. Dealt with it a bit differently. But again, it's these things where no one's actually going to say, oh, I put my elbow in his chest because I'm a racist. People just do things, and they won't say why they've done it. They're not going to tell you the motive behind it. So yeah, that's just little things like that. I think a lot of black people experience over time. So.
Yeah. For me, I think I remember within work, I remember Dad speaking about people, just people who have said horrible things. I think either people, drivers on the road and stuff like that. And with my mum, I remember. I hope you don't want me saying, but my mum was having
She's not here.
Video calls and things with work, and she would ask me if her hair looks presentable and stuff like that, and I'm like, yeah, of course, why wouldn't it? And I think she was just worried that some colleagues have said in the past that her natural hair isn't always quite work presentable sort of thing. Yeah.
I think one of the things in the many jobs that I've done over the years is that you find that you can do the same job as somebody that's not from an ethnic minority community, and if there was a promotion, you would be passed by, they would get it, or you might even find yourself training somebody else and they would go on to get promoted, but I wouldn't. And once or twice I had raised that as an issue, and I think the responses were less than accepting that that was the situation. And, you know, we've never had somebody like you in this position, or we didn't think you would suit that position.
Did you ever challenge those thought process?
I think in my younger years, I did question them, but how far I could go to challenge them, I never knew. So, although they were raised as issues, I think looking back, knowing what I know now, I could have challenged them further.
When I was in the sales industry, I always remember one of the bosses said to another boss, could you take Clem out for the day just to show him the ropes in sales? And one of the bosses said, no, I'm not going to take him out because nobody's going to buy anything of him. All right? So the boss said to him, okay, I'll put it another way. If you don't take him out, you're gone. All right? So he reluctantly took me out for the week. All right? And it was my absolute determination to be the best that I could. Not better than anybody else, but the best that I could that I could. You know something? My philosophy is, and it always has been, okay, that it's not my problem, he's the one with the problem.
Yeah.
Okay? And I never walk around with a chip on my shoulder. It isn't what happens to you, it's how you deal with it. And that's my philosophy. And at the end of the week, that same guy that was discriminatory to me pulled me to one side and he apologized. And I said, what are you apologizing for? He said, you know something, I've had some bad experiences with black people, but this 1 week with you has changed my whole perspective. And I said, you know, if one person can change because of whatever, it makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
I think regarding jobs, there was jobs that maybe they would have liked to have gone into, but they wasn't able to because there was blockages along the way. But fun of my father actually was a bus driver as well. Okay, in the very early days. He was a conductor first and a driver, but he decided to take a college course in diesel fitting. And I always remember these green books, loads of green books that he used to study. And he got through the course and he became a diesel fitter. So, you know, although there was a lot of discrimination, they fought through.
Yeah.
You know, they fought through, built a foundation. And there was a perfect example to us that, you know, don't let the system, don't be a victim to the system.
He was telling me about how he came over here from Antigua and how there was only, I think, a selection of 3 places where he could choose to work because of his background. And so I think he started to work in a factory. And he was telling me how my nan worked in a factory as well. And then she worked in a hospital until she retired pretty much. And so my other grandma, she also worked in hospital, didn't she?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
I'm not sure what Granddad did.
I think Granddad, he done a little bit of everything. He done, he was a bus driver. I've got a feeling he may have been a soldier at some point as well. So, you know, he's done lots of bits and pieces, but mainly bus driving in London. Yeah.
Okay. It's like Nanny's only really recently started telling me stories about like when she was working and stuff in like the factory down at the docks. The docks, yeah. So I don't really know much. And and she used to talk about like when they first came down to Ipswich, how they found it hard to find somewhere to live just because of the racism that was around. And that it would say like no black people, no dogs or something like that, or like the stuff. Well, if you're talking about like the grandparents again, like Nanny just said that for them they just had to keep going. Like they just didn't pay any mind. Like they just had to work hard to just 10 times harder to try and get what they needed to get.
She also said that like it kind of just helped them make more of a community,
Yeah.
and that like everyone used to help each other out. So you would pretty much know everyone who. Well, not everyone, but you know most of the other black people around, and if people needed a babysitter or if they needed help, people would just kind of gather together and help each other.
The injustices How can you repatriate people to a country that they were never born into? They had no idea of the country. You're sending them back to live on the street, basically, when they have their home, they've paid their taxes here, and they've grown up here. What has given somebody the right to be able to destroy papers in the background so that in their word, in their minds, nothing can be retraced? My thoughts on the Windrush scandal is that every single person that has met an injustice should be compensated, and should be compensated greatly. And the compensation isn't just a financial compensation, because you can't put a price on the hurt that they went through and that their families went through.
Oh, well, that is obviously I had all the information, and I think that's disgusting, really, because as we know ourselves, like mum and dad, they're the ones who were sort of invited over here when they couldn't get enough people to do some of the jobs that people over here didn't like. So to treat people like that, especially when they've been living here all these years, is absolutely disgusting, because I'm sorry to say, you get people who, shall we say, come across illegally now, and they've got more rights, given more rights than the people who were asked to come here in the first place. So that is, in my mind, completely out of order. I think that's disgusting behaviour.
That's a disgrace. I mean, at the end of the day, we're human beings, we're people. We didn't come and beg for nothing, we come and work for what we have, you know. My parents come and work the hardest that they can. I mean, like, I came here and see my dad work. He work on the railway, right? And I see that man get up every single morning, right, with his packed lunch and go to work and come home, you know what I mean? Just to make sure that his family is fed, right? Yeah. My dad always tell me, yeah, listen, you have to have a trade. You have to go and do something, you know. Nobody now do nothing for you, you know. You have to go and do something, you know. Yeah. So, we're not lazy people. We're not beggars, we're not scoundrels, you know. So when these people talk about, send them back, and, you know, that's disgraceful, man. That is a kick in our teeth. That is looking at, they're looking at us like, say, well, yeah, they're done with slavery, but, you know, they abolished slavery, but they ain't done with it, you know? Yeah, they're taking you back to them times, well, nothing hasn't changed.
I personally think it was really bad. I think that if people were invited to the country to help to build the country up after the wars, they should have been better accommodated and looked after, not just arrive on a boat and then left to fend for themselves the way they were. I think a lot more could have been done to educate the indigenous population of England as to why people are coming, and the invitations that were extended to them. And historically, I think that in school we should have been taught that. I think there has been an educational misjustice in the sense, because the white teachers that I had only taught slavery, and they didn't teach the history of how my parents ended up in this country.
I think that's rubbish. It's really unfair, and they should fight it right down, because they are the ones that helped build up this country. They didn't have people that didn't want to do waste matters and things like that. The black was going in and doing it because they're earning a living. And once they start doing that, they said the blacks coming here to take the job away. So why didn't they do it in the first place?
You just think of how hard they've worked, and it's just like a slap in the face to them, like saying that they have to go back. Like, you would think they would just not even care about that. But it's just, for me, it was just crazy to see the amount of stories of people saying, oh, that they have to go back or whatever.
I think it's really sad as well, and it just made me think of when my nan said that she was working in a factory and she was pregnant with my uncle and stuff like that. Just all the stuff that they had to do, and they came over to help, and then just to have it kind of turned on them after all these years as well, it must just, it's just really sad, I
think a lot of them were told to come over, you know, from the Caribbean to the UK, you know, because the streets are paved in gold or whatever you want to say. But yeah, a lot of them helped to build this country.
Yeah.
And yeah, like my sister said, it's a bit of a slap in the face, you know, because, you know, they work so hard along with other countries, you know, Asians and other, you know, people that came to this country, and they've just said, actually, some of you got to go back, and it's just like, it's not on really.
No,
so,
they built their life here. Yeah.
To see that they thought they were coming to do some good, some justices who were here earlier in the 40s and 50s, joined the army or the Air Force or wherever they were in. You know, they, as you said, yes, they should have been treated more respectably. Thinking they come, and to think of it or to say about it, it's the foreigners who build up this place. Mm-hmm. Because, as I said, I came by plane, we flew over, and I was appalled to see the state the airport was in. I was appalled on the traveling by train coming up from the capital, London, to Ipswich here. It was disgusting in my, you know, thing there, because we got trains back home. We traveled in trains back home, travel on buses and cars and what's not. And it was just appalling to see.
Yeah, this is a sore subject for me, because I was one of those people who had to go to the Home Office to then go through all the rigmarole of actually making sure that they don't kick me out of the country. And with the support of my friend Veronica, she was absolutely brilliant. She was with me every step of the way, went to the Home Office with myself, did all the paperwork with me. I think it's disgraceful. I really do think it's disgraceful the way people are treated. And I've always said that in this country, there is a case of toleration rather than acceptance. Yeah, so they'll tolerate you, but they'll never accept you, and that's a quite, you know, the Windrush situation. I like that, you know, to the T. These are people who's come here, giving up, you know, not giving up their lives, but work their lives here, pay their taxes, you know, and to be told that they're not welcome, you know, that is just not right. That's wrong. And a lot of people who has been deported, who is not reported in the media, and a lot of people has gone back home and has actually passed away since, because they then have to adapt to a life that they wasn't accustomed to. England is where, you know, people have accepted England was their own, and to be sent somewhere else where it's not really your home, even though you've got family there, you know, but it's not your own. You know, your home is where your family, your immediate family is. I just think that's disgraceful, and you know, that should never have happened.
Education is the main factor of all the black and white and blue, whatever we are. And the only thing going to settle it is education. If they were educated about what we were, the relationship that we got with the empire and all of that, they would have treated us better, but they didn't know. And the thing is that Powell was hired to go to Jamaica and get people to come here. And yeah, well, he's Powell, and I forget his Christian name. Don't check me up on that, I'll do you. So if he didn't start, he was like a two-edged sword. He went down there in his big house with his boy and his big pair, and he recruited these people. And instead of they give them passport, they give them a pass like a receipt. And they didn't have a passport, they had permits instead of passport, because passport would have cost too much, ain't they? So they gave them permit, and I don't think that should happen. And that happened because they treat us like subhuman and subjects to them all the time. Otherwise they would have given them, even if they had given them passport, they would have signed it in a different way than if they had just bought a trunk to come here. They needed passport, and I think that was a dirty, pardon, I think that was a dirty thing to do. I think that's disgusting. I knew a girl, well, I didn't know her. When her mother was pregnant with her, I could remember. And she came along, and she went in the hospital in train. She lost her house, she's lost her car, she's lost her pension, and any savings that she had, and she had nothing. She lost her superannuation in the hospital, where every month, according to how much you take to help make up your pension, whenever you leave, all of that she lost. Nothing she's got, and that is wrong.
I guess it's the government, isn't it, that invited people to this country and didn't advise them or take care of their status in the country, and until it comes to the headlines that there are many people in the country that haven't got a passport, people that came when they were in their young age through the Windrush time. They hadn't done anything to secure their status in the country, and to hear of people being sent back is horrifying, really. People that were born here maybe, or grew up here, schooled here, and then you find that they're given a certain amount of time to go to an office in London to process their and prove who they are and how long they've been here and all that. That to me doesn't sound right.
Well, I think it's an absolute travesty, you know, that people were allowed to come. In fact, they were invited over here to help to build this country to the standard and where it is today, and then to turn around and then kick them in the teeth, basically, you know, and say that you're not wanted anymore. You know, I think it's an absolute travesty. You know, that's my views on that.
I don't understand it whatsoever, but because we all know a little bit about it. I don't know how, this is just my opinion, from how our country, as England itself, let so many others in, just for example, let so many others in, but the people from the Windrush who have paid taxes, who have built houses, built families, how everything, all of theirs suddenly disappeared. And then still to this day, we have somebody from an asylum seeking country come in and looked after and not deported where necessary. But people that have been here and established, let's say, they've had to be deported, and it doesn't make sense to me. I want to know more into it and what's happened, what's gone missing, and how has it gone missing, or why is it damaged? And why can't we make that out? It doesn't make sense to me, and, you know? It sounds like a big payout was coming out, and some people couldn't afford it, you know what I'm trying to say? So
I was one of them people who had to go through that process.
Yeah. My father as well.
Yeah, so yeah, that was not a very pleasant experience.
No, I can imagine. Yeah. Unity is one, but I think we all do need to come together, and like we're doing here, I think people need to have this kind of thing educated in school. So it's not like you're saying like a name to somebody, you need to understand what it means and what you are saying to somebody. Therefore, I'm not just talking about from a black side, maybe even the white side, maybe even a Romanian side, maybe even as a whole. You know, we need to educate every single person on a little bit of one another. And that way we can adapt, and that way we can grow. Do you understand? Oh, she doesn't like that because he's or you know what I'm trying to say? You can't eat that pork because he's Muslim. Do you know what I'm trying to say? But if we understand why, then we have knowledge about it. Okay, that's why they do it. That's why, not because, we don't like that. Because we don't know it. Because that's what it feels like. You know, we don't know it, so we don't like it. We turn our nose up it straight away. You know, when you get something new, you grow to love it. You know what I mean? You adapt to it. So that's what it's all about, learning and adapting, man.
What the Black Lives Matter movement has captured is that there was a need to have a conversation. There has always been a need to have a conversation. But now we're in the situation where you can never say that you didn't know. So no longer is it hidden, no longer is it under the surface. We're now in the situation where the conversation needs to be had. So there's no longer a reason to justify yourself. There's no need to start having the conversation from the beginning. We have now moved close to the end. So my question is, what are the results? Where are they? And if we haven't even started that conversation, then who in the institutions that we walk in and out of do we need to talk to?
My input on the Black Lives Matter movement is it's a valid movement. But what we have to recognise is the fact that the movement was created in the first place. Why? Why was it created? It was created to recognise the injustices that has been received by black people throughout the UK. And it's not just in the UK. You're going to see that it's in Europe. It's even in the Caribbean itself. It's in Africa. It's in Asia. It's actually everywhere. You're going to find that these indifferences occur.
It shouldn't take the killing of a man, yeah, for the world to recognize like a next man is the next man, right? And my life is just as important as your life. You know what I mean? Yeah. But following up that, I'm glad that people, you know what I mean, showing their strength, yeah, and recognizing, all right then, this needs to be done, because if we don't do this, people are not going to see certain actions. You know, I am glad there's something, you know, slowly, you know, moving on. I said slowly moving on, Clem, because I've lived this long, right? And so many things I've seen happen in my lifetime, right? And I haven't seen no change.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm hoping like the generation, right? You know, I'm hoping that they would learn.
Yeah.
You know, the next generation to come. You know what I mean? Even these guys here, when they got kids, yeah, I'm hoping that, you know, a generation will come now when like everything is on an even scale, right? You know, when no one is going to get judged, you know, when a man could walk out the street and say, well, yeah, I'm living because life is for living.
Well, first of all, the George Floyd situation, forgive me, but I'm not surprised, yeah. And I think the thing that we're missing here is that because it happened in America, everyone seems to think that America is the worst place on earth. That same thing happens right here in Britain, yeah? And a regular occurrence in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s. The only difference is that there was no one with a mobile camera in those days taking photographs of what was actually going on. George Floyd was, I'm using the wrong terminology here, but it's fortunate for his family that somebody actually made that effort to capture that image so the perpetrator gets caught. Yeah. But we tend to jump on the bandwagon in this country, and try to be whiter than white, yeah, when we're not actually addressing the same issues which is taking place right here, right now, in Britain.
Oh gosh, George Floyd lost his life. I think it was such a senseless, unnecessary killing. I mean, the world, it was there for the world to see, you know. Had it not been, my opinion is that had it not been for that young girl who had stood there and taken that film, you know, who had recorded it, I don't think a conviction would have been possible, you know, in spite of the fact that there were eyewitnesses. But that key piece of evidence, you know, was that video that she had taken, you know, and it just resonates with even the times and times before that, you know, us as black people has to endure such abuse, you know, and such racist ideologies coming from not only the white counterparts, but other nations as well. So that was hard to see, you know, the abuse that he endured. Some sort of satisfaction that the policeman eventually was convicted on all 3 counts. But I feel maybe he should have gotten more years. But that's their judicial system. I think the Black Lives Movement is a really good movement. It's a respected movement, although there have been some sections of society that they seem to seek to be tarnishing their image, you know, or doesn't want to acknowledge that. And I think we can see that in the recent football, what's it called, you know, the Euro Cup that has just been completed, and the England team in particular had taken the stand to take the knee. Some people were critical, you know, some sections of the society was critical of them, but I myself, I do applaud that, because it means, you know, it's taking a stand against racism, you know, and it's what the Black Lives Matter movement stands for. You know, I just hope that they are more respected and they get more of a voice to raise all of these issues within the British society, actually. Because, I mean, let's face it, within the British society there are still pockets of coercive, or I should say a coercive racism, you know. But yeah, I just hope that the movement stands and keeps standing for what it is, and that there will be a voice for the black people in this country to stand up and challenge and confront racism, and hopefully, I mean, all the way to the lawmakers to really make that law stand to support people, you know, of colour.
Well, it is a tragedy, sad, that George Floyd had to die the way he did, under the weight of somebody's body with their knee on his neck. That is horrendous. I think that the good thing that came from it, in a sense, is that the whole world saw what happened on that occasion. And it has pricked the consciences of so many people. Black lives have always mattered. It's just that people have chosen not to make them feel that they matter. So I can now turn my TV on and see various people represented in the news, in advertisements. It's not just one token black person. They are families of black people now on TV. And I'd like to see that as a normal practice going forward, not just at this year or next year. Yes, I think people are having those awkward conversations now. People are considered now for jobs that maybe they couldn't have got 10 years ago. People may be considered even for promotion, when maybe I wasn't many years ago. I think that mainly white organisations are having those awkward conversations, and hopefully something good will come out of it. Well, for many organisations it will always be a tick box exercise, because as we know, many of our big organisations are institutionally racist, and so it'll take time before that becomes the norm, where people can get jobs and move within companies as normally as anybody else. I feel that will take time, but I think that the younger generations coming up have a voice which is now being heard.
For me, I'd like to see changes. Like, I would like to see people's mindsets change and not just their talk, because I know a lot of companies and stuff have, you know, started to try and make things more inclusive, which is amazing, but I just don't want it to happen because they're kind of been told to, but yet behind closed doors they're like, oh, for goodness sake, we had to, you know,
go away.
yeah, you know, oh, let's, you know, hire a black person just so we can put them out in the front. And it's kind of hard to kind of see, you know, am I being hired for this reason, or is it genuine? I would really like to see people's mindsets change, and I don't know how you can change what's in people's heads, but I would like that to happen somehow. And I do feel like it's started to happen. A lot of more conversations and stuff has started to be had. But yeah, my hope is just that people's mindsets will change about different races and just all being united and stuff like that. Like genuinely changed. Yeah.
I think that starts with education as well. That's
Yeah.
the number one thing. It's got to start with educating children. I think like a lot of the people that have, you know, that was in like World War II and like the older generation, some of them might not necessarily change their mindsets, but the children are impressionable. You know,
Yeah.
we can change their minds and set them up, you know, to be really good going forward. So it's all about the youth. I would say educating the youth that you know you're not born as a racist. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a taught thing. So I feel like, you know, you need to be able to change the curriculum at school, for example, include a lot more black empowerment. I wouldn't say black empowerment, but more black history that is good as well as slavery.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Yeah,
there's black people before slavery. You know, good things that happen.
Yeah.
You know, Africa, there's a massive continent. No one really knows about these things. And
Sometimes I
think,
feel like we started at slavery, so it's
yeah,
funny.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
just-
400 years ago,
yeah.
but we've been in existence, well, arguably, you know, we was the first people on this planet. So, you know, yeah, I would say education anyway. You can go on about that forever. So
Yeah. I was gonna say the same thing, like in terms of like just seeing more books with just having more ethnic minorities in the books. Again, like for my kids, I've been able to buy stuff online, like little even books for like the toddlers, so they can actually see themselves. Because a lot of even like the programs that Israel watches, a lot of them he doesn't really see himself that much. So we try and make sure that there's more things that they can see.
I think I saw it's a very sad case. As I said, I am upset in a way when people kill each other, whether white or black, because people belong to God. God is the one that, you know, so I thought, what really going people's minds to do this sort of thing, which I think is very sad. I'm not happy about it, mind you, and I don't think, well, these people should be killed and because they do. But something I have to tell somebody up to yesterday, we have to be careful because a lot of people, the way they behave as adults is their background, understand? They got a certain background that wasn't, and then they carry it on in their life. So, and some people, I mean, they do things, they just don't think they know much better than what. They think they're happy doing certain things.
I tell you, every time it come on the news, it make me feel sick. Why can you treat a human being like that? He had no defense for himself. You knock him down on the ground and then holding him in his throat. Although he feels he can't breathe, you have no mercy in him. What kind of people are you? I don't like to even hear it these days because it seems so sad. It could be one of my child. I've got 4 boys, it could be one of them. No, we're not perfect. Although we taught them the right way, it's not always that it goes that way. So it could maybe a mishap or something and it happened to him, and you know. They have no mercy.
Let us all pull together to make this country a better country, to make life easier, you know, and not break yourself down because of others maybe don't like you or don't appreciate you. You know, just let us pull together and it will be a better country.
So what I don't see is the positive influences. I see so many strong black men who are doing positive things in their community, whether it be on Instagram, whether they're using social media. They are doing fantastic things for themselves and their community, and they're leading youngsters. So while we may not have the funding, and while we may not have all the publicity, what we do have is the heart in order to get there. So I'm glad, and maybe it is hidden, and maybe it's hidden for a reason, but as long as it's something that we are doing for ourselves and we can positively impact the next generation, then I'm for it.
I mean, I believe in young people, you know. I believe that young people, they do have an energy. I mean, sometimes young people go the wrong way, and it's often because of bad influence and negative company. But some of them, in today's world, I think there's so much more opportunities. They strive so much to try and make their lives better so that their families can benefit and make their families proud. It is unfair that some sections, again, of the society is tarnishing young people. But I think they've got an energy, they've got more insight into the world today, into technology, into how the technology have evolved around us as human beings, and how they can even, make their own, business prospects, coming out of technology, and so many areas, No, but it is, young people have a really, really great energy. They just need that sort of guidance and channel in the right way, and they will excel, They will excel. So, my advice to any young person is to keep positive, take on the challenges that confront them, but still try to have that positive energy and tap into whatever resources that is available so that they can make themselves, productive, and make themselves safe and happy so that they can be rewarded in this life.
For youngsters, I would say, life is for living, take your opportunities when they come, all right? Nothing is given to you on a plate, nothing is placed in your hands. You have to get up, take the initiative, and make the positive action to make things happen in your life. That's one thing I'd say in a nutshell to young people.
I think just to always have that in your mind, to just look at the the end goal. What do you want to be? What job do you want to do? Where do you want to settle? These sort of questions you actually need to ask yourself quite early on. When you're 12, 13, 14, you need to start thinking about those really then, ideally. And a lot of kids, when they get to that age, they're quite impressionable, and there's a lot of social media and all these things. So yeah, just look at the end game and just to stay focused, I would say.
I would completely agree. It's funny, I've been talking to my friends about this kind of thing because we're kind of doing the stuff now which we should have been doing like when we were younger, like preparing. Like I'm thinking about doing driving lessons and stuff, and I feel like I should have done it ages ago. And about how to save and about saving for a house. And I think, gosh, when I was younger, these things weren't really important to me then. And I think, God, if I had been saving for my part-time jobs, right, like from when I was younger, I'd be rolling in it by now. And I just think all these full-time jobs, and what do I have to show for it? So I'll definitely say, like my brother said, just look at the bigger picture, and have fun with your friends, but also think about what you want to do when you're older. It's not too late, because like I say, I'm doing the groundwork now with my friends, like to look at our futures. But if you start it from when you're young, like you'll be flying, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, the same really, and just to plan. I would say just to try the best to plan ahead, in terms of career-wise, but also in terms of peer pressure. Don't focus too much on what other people want. I definitely think when I was younger, I was working too hard to please all people around me. It's just, that's what I would say. Don't focus on, have friends, but don't think that you need to impress them all the time.
Yeah. And I would say it's try and stay as close to God as possible when you can, from when you're young and when you're at uni and stuff like that, because it's easy to kind of forget, which sounds terrible, but to try and do Christian unions or Christian groups at school, just to kind of keep that going in your life. Yeah.
I would tell our youngsters to focus and get their heads down when they're at school. They might not think it's worth it, or they might be messing around. I think they need to take education seriously. They need to be strong enough to say no to some of the bad vices that are out on the streets, and people recruiting them, maybe drugs and other things like that. There needs to be a strength within the community to say no to a lot of the bad stuff that's always gone on. And they need to press forward for jobs and careers that they may have not seen their community represented before, such as media and maybe even the councils and different places. And I think they need to really work hard at carving out a future for themselves. It's not easy, and it won't be easy, but I think that there is hope.
For somewhere to go, and they promised the streets paved with gold. Many packed their things and left their sons so glad. Some sailed on their sailing ships, others flew over the Atlantic. We arrived in this new place with many plans, but after so many things anticipated, we were surprised to see so many unsmiling faces. And though we came by invite, we were shown so much hatred. Can you violate me without cause? You said, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. We thank you for your great welcome on our arrival in your land, the not so united queendom. The troubles we face are still not yet done, but we'll have to keep on pushing through. Finally I found employment, it can just about pay the rent. Got to hold my head up high, no time for tears, no, oh no. No need I look for no promotion, it always goes to the other man. Though I'm working twice as hard, no one cares, no. But now my wife found a job in the city, working hard on the night shift ain't easy, oh no. But we gotta find a way to make loose ends meet, because the children need school clothes